Tyler Rodriguez never expected his Tuesday morning postal route to change two lives forever. As he approached the Victorian house on Elm Avenue, something caught his eye in the third-floor attic window. A figure was holding up pieces of paper against the glass, frantically switching between different signs. At first, Tyler thought it was children playing games, but when he grabbed his binoculars from the truck to get a better look, what he read on those papers made his hands tremble uncontrollably. Tyler had been working for the Postal Service for 5 years, and he prided himself on knowing every house on his route. The Morrison family lived at 247 Elm Avenue, a beautiful 3-story Victorian that always looked like something from a magazine. But that Wednesday morning, as Tyler sorted through the mail for their address, he noticed something odd. There had been no outgoing mail from the Morrison house in over 8 months. For a family of 3, that was highly unusual in an age where people still sent bills, letters, and packages regularly. As Tyler walked up the cobblestone path, he glanced up at the attic window where he'd seen the figure the day before. There she was again, but this time she wasn't holding paper signs. Instead, she was using her hands to spell out letters in sign language. Tyler had learned basic sign language in college when he dated a deaf student, and though he was rusty, he could make out the desperate message being spelled over and over. P-R-I-S-O-N-E-R. The woman's face was pressed against the glass, and even from 3 stories down, Tyler could see tears streaming down her cheeks. Before Tyler could react, the woman suddenly ducked away from the window as if someone had called her name. Tyler felt a chill run down his spine as he realized he might be witnessing something far more sinister than he initially thought. He completed his delivery by sliding the mail through the slot, but instead of moving on to his next stop, Tyler sat in his truck for 20 minutes, watching the house. The Victorian mansion, with its perfect landscaping and pristine exterior, suddenly felt ominous and foreboding. That evening, Tyler couldn't stop thinking about what he'd witnessed. He decided to do some research. Using his Postal Service database, he discovered that Benjamin Morrison had recently changed his address for all mail delivery, redirecting everything to a P.O. box downtown. This meant that any mail for family members, his wife Amanda and daughter Sophie, would never actually reach the house. Tyler also noticed that all utility bills, grocery deliveries, and even medical prescriptions were being sent to the P.O. box. It was as if Benjamin was ensuring that no one had any reason to visit or contact the house directly. Over the next week, Tyler began varying his delivery times and routes to pass by the Morrison house at different hours. What he discovered disturbed him greatly. The house had a pattern that seemed almost mechanical. At exactly 8:15 a.m., all the curtains would be drawn closed simultaneously, as if controlled by a central system. At 6:30 p.m., they would open again, but only on the first and second floors. The third-floor attic remained consistently dark, except for brief moments when Tyler would catch glimpses of movement behind the glass. On Friday, Tyler made a decision that would change everything. Instead of his usual uniform, he dressed in plain clothes and approached the house from the back alley that ran behind Elm Avenue. The Morrison property had a tall privacy fence, but Tyler noticed something alarming. The fence wasn't just for privacy. It was topped with razor wire that angled inward, designed not to keep people out, but to keep people in. The backyard looked like a prison yard, with high walls on all sides and no visible way for anyone inside to escape or signal for help. Tyler managed to position himself where he could see into the backyard through a small gap in the fence. What he saw made his blood run cold. There were multiple security cameras mounted on every corner of the house, all pointing inward toward the windows and doors. Motion sensors were placed strategically around the perimeter, and Tyler could see the faint outline of bars behind what appeared to be normal windows from the street side. This wasn't just a home. It was a carefully constructed prison designed to look normal from the outside. That weekend, Tyler decided to take his investigation further. He visited the local library and researched the Morrison family in old newspaper archives. What he found was heartbreaking. 3 years earlier, Amanda Morrison had been a successful real estate agent, and Sophie had been an active student involved in multiple school activities. Their photos showed happy, vibrant people living normal lives. But then, abruptly, all traces of their public life disappeared. Amanda's real estate license had been quietly transferred to inactive status, and Sophie had been withdrawn from school under the guise of homeschooling. Tyler also discovered that Benjamin Morrison had a history that didn't match his current respectable appearance. Court records showed previous restraining orders from 2 ex-girlfriends, both citing controlling and threatening behavior. There had also been a bankruptcy 3 years earlier that coincided with when Amanda and Sophie disappeared from public life. Tyler began to suspect that Benjamin's financial troubles had triggered a psychological breakdown that led to him imprisoning his own family. On Monday morning, Tyler made a decision that required incredible courage. He called in sick to work and spent the day surveilling the Morrison house. At 10:30 a.m., he watched Benjamin leave in his car, dressed in a business suit and carrying a briefcase. Tyler had learned Benjamin's schedule over the past week. He left every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at exactly the same time and returned precisely 4 hours later. This gave Tyler a narrow window of opportunity to make contact with the people inside. Tyler approached the house in the back alley and climbed over the fence, careful to avoid the razor wire. The backyard was even more disturbing up close. He could see that the grass was overgrown in certain areas, suggesting that the people inside were not allowed outside even in their own yard. The windows, he could see, were not just barred. They were sealed shut with heavy-duty locks that could only be opened from the outside. Tyler felt like he was approaching a maximum security prison rather than a family home. Tyler knocked softly on the back door, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might be audible. After what felt like an eternity, he heard footsteps approaching slowly and cautiously. The door opened just a crack, revealing a chain lock still in place. Through the narrow opening, Tyler could see a woman's eye, wide with terror and hope simultaneously. "Are you here to help us?" came a whispered voice, so quiet Tyler had to strain to hear it. "My name is Amanda Morrison, and my daughter and I have been trapped in this house for over 3 years." What Amanda told Tyler in those precious few minutes before Benjamin's return would haunt him for the rest of his life. Benjamin had gradually transformed from a controlling husband into something far more sinister after his business failed. He had convinced their friends and neighbors that Amanda was suffering from severe agoraphobia and that Sophie had learning disabilities requiring special homeschooling. Meanwhile, he had systematically cut off all their contact with the outside world, installed surveillance equipment throughout the house, and created physical barriers that made escape impossible. Amanda explained that Benjamin monitored their every movement through hidden cameras and microphones. He controlled all food, water, and basic necessities, using deprivation as punishment for any perceived disobedience. Sophie, now 16, had spent 3 crucial years of her teenage development as a prisoner in her own home. With no friends, no school, and no hope of rescue. They had tried to escape numerous times, but Benjamin had anticipated every possible method and had installed countermeasures for each one. The most heartbreaking detail Amanda shared was that they had been trying to signal for help for months, but Tyler was the first person who had noticed and cared enough to investigate. She had tried holding up signs, using sign language, even tapping SOS on the windows and Morse code, but everyone who passed by either didn't notice or assumed it was something innocent. Tyler realized that his postal service training, which taught him to be observant and notice changes in routine, had literally saved their lives. Tyler immediately called the police from his cell phone, but he didn't leave Amanda and Sophie alone while they waited. He stayed with them, helping them gather evidence of their imprisonment and preparing them for what would happen when the authorities arrived. Amanda showed Tyler journals she had hidden, documenting 3 years of abuse and imprisonment. Sophie, who had been too terrified to come downstairs initially, finally emerged from her room, a thin, pale teenager who looked years younger than her actual age. When the police arrived, they were shocked by what they discovered. The house was essentially a sophisticated prison, with electronic locks on bedroom doors, cameras in every room including bathrooms, and a monitoring system that Benjamin controlled from his smartphone. They found stockpiles of food and supplies that suggested Benjamin had been planning this imprisonment for a long time. The evidence was so overwhelming that there was no question about what had been happening in the Morrison house. Benjamin Morrison was arrested when he returned from his business meeting, which police later discovered was actually a weekly visit to a therapist where he had been lying about his family situation for years. He was charged with kidnapping, false imprisonment, domestic abuse, and child endangerment. The case made national headlines because of the sophisticated nature of the prison he had created and the length of time his family had been held captive. Amanda and Sophie Morrison began the long process of rebuilding their lives with the help of trauma specialists and victim advocates. Amanda had to relearn how to function in the outside world after 3 years of imprisonment, while Sophie faced the challenge of returning to a normal teenage life after missing crucial years of development. But they were free, and that was what mattered most. Tyler continued to check on their progress, and over time, he watched them slowly heal and reclaim their lives. The case raised important questions about how well we really know our neighbors and whether we pay attention to signs that something might be wrong. Tyler's decision to trust his instincts and investigate what seemed like innocent behavior saved 2 lives and exposed a crime that might have continued for many more years. His story reminds us that sometimes the most ordinary people can become heroes simply by caring enough to look closer when something doesn't seem right. If you notice someone signaling desperately from a window, would you have the courage to investigate? Or would you assume it was nothing and continue with your day? Tyler Rodriguez proved that one observant person, willing to take risks to help others, can change everything. His vigilance and compassion turned what could have been a lifetime of imprisonment into a story of rescue and hope. What would you do if you witnessed something that didn't seem quite right in your own neighborhood?